Good morning, children. Today we are going to see remaining topics of the history chapter 2. From trade to territory, the company establishes power. Okay. See, children, in the last class we have discussed about the Aurangzeb's death or the decline of the Mughal dynasty. Then how did the East India Company establish their power on land on the Indian subcontinent, isn't it? Yes, and what was their purpose? Why did they come to India? Actually, why did they come to India? For trade. They wanted to trade in the east, so that they came to India. In fact, what attracted the Britishers to India? The fine qualities of cotton and silk, isn't it? They could buy goods at cheap price and sell them to Europe at higher price, isn't it? Then directly did they come to India? No. Who granted the sole right to trade with the East? To the East India Company. Queen Elizabeth I granted the sole right, grand charter to the East India Company to trade with the East, isn't it? Then what did we see? We saw about the discovery of sea route from Portugal to India, isn't it? And who explored India? Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese sailor, discovered the sea route to India in the year 1498, isn't it? Then what did we discuss? We discussed about the company's establishment of trade, right, in Bengal, isn't it? Yes. In the year 1651, the first English factory was set up on the banks of the river Hooghly, isn't it? Yes. Then what did they do? Their factory had a warehouse where goods for export were stored. Yes, warehouse, godown, isn't it? Then what did they do? They started to fortifying their their factory. So by 1696, the East India Company began building a fort around the settlement. So 2 years later, what happened? It bribed Mughal officials into giving the company's zamindari rights over 3 villages. So they got zamindari rights over 3 villages. One of this was Calcutta, which later grew into the city of Calcutta or Kolkata, isn't it? Then who issued foreman to the company? A foreman means a royal edict or a royal order issued by whom? Aurangzeb. Then due to this order, the company got right to trade without duty, isn't it? Then what did we see? Then we saw the areas of conflict between the Bengal Nawabs and the East India Company, right? The Nawabs of Bengal refused to grant the company concession and asserted their power and autonomy. So they demanded large amount for the company's right to trade. But the company was denied the right to mint coins and stopped it from extending its fortification. So that trade led to battles, right? Then we saw about the Battle of Plassey, isn't it? Yes. When Alivardi Khan died in the year 1756, Rajuddaula became the Nawab of Bengal. But the company was worried about his power and keen on a puppet ruler who would willingly give trade concessions and other privileges. So that they wanted a puppet ruler. So he tried, though without success, to help one of Sirajuddaulla's rivals become the Nawab. So an infuriated Sirajuddaulla asked the company to stop meddling in the political affairs of his domination, stop fortification and pay the revenues. After negotiations failed, the Nawab marched with 30,000 soldiers to the English factory at Kazim Bazar, isn't it? And captured the company officials, locked the warehouse, that godown. Actually disarmed all Englishmen and blockaded English ships. Then he marched to Calcutta to establish control over the company's fort there. Who marched to the Calcutta fort, Sirajuddaula. Okay. Then what happened on hearing the news of the fall of Calcutta? Company officials in Madras sent forces under the command of whom? Robert Clive. Then by naval fleets. Then prolonged negotiations with the Nawab followed. Finally, in the year 1757, Robert Clive led the company's army against Sirajuddaula at Plassey. See, one of the main reasons for the defeat of the Nawab was that the forces led by Mir Jafar, one of Sirajuddaulla's commanders, isn't it? Do you remember, children? He betrayed Sirajuddaulah. In the last minute, he withdrew his troops from the battlefield. He didn't even fight in the battlefield. So that Sirajuddaula lost his victory and he was assassinated. Isn't it? Yes. The Battle of Plassey became famous because it was the first major victory the company won in India. Isn't it? Yes. Then what happened? After the defeat at Plassey, Sirajuddaula was assassinated. Then who became the Nawab of Bengal? Mir Jafar. Right? Do you remember that? Mir Jafar. One of the whose commander? Sirajuddaula's commanders, right? But Mir Jafar could not prove himself a puppet ruler for a long time. So the company deposed him and installed Mir Qasim in his place. Mir Qasim also complained and he in turn was defeated in the Battle of Buxar in the year 1764. And what happened after that? In the year 1765, the Mughal emperor appointed the company as the Diwan of the provinces of Bengal. So the company now began to exploit the vast revenue resources of Bengal. So which year they got Diwan rights of Bengal, Diwan of the provinces of Bengal in the year 1765, isn't it? So after the Battle of Buxar, the company appointed residents in Indian states. Okay. Actually, who were the residents? The residents were the political or commercial agents and their job was to serve and further the interests of the company. See, what purpose did the residents serve? Through the residents, the company officials began interfering in the internal affairs of Indian states. So, their purpose was to interfere in the internal affairs of Indian states. Isn't it? Yes. Then we saw about subsidiary alliance, isn't it? Yes, see, in the year 1757 to 1857, the company launched a direct military attack at unknown territory, and also it tried a variety of political and economic and diplomatic methods to extend its influence and on land. So the period between 1765 to 1857 was the next phase of British conquest of India. Almost the whole of Indian subcontinent was brought under their rule in this period of about 100 years. So this was achieved by means of various methods such as annexations, alliances and wars. In this, the company introduced subsidiary alliance. Actually, this subsidiary alliance was introduced by Lord Wellesley. Who introduced subsidiary alliance? Lord Wellesley. Okay. Then Lord Wellesley, or he is also known as Richard Wellesley. Okay. So, Lord Wellesley, the Governor General of India in the year 1798 to 1805, he introduced this strategy for gaining control of more and more Indian territories. Because of his expansionist policy, he is known as the Akbar of the English East India Company. That much clever he was. he introduced this subsidiary alliance to annex many territories. So he is known as the Akbar of the English East India Company. See, Wellesley forced many states to enter into a subsidiary alliance. According to this alliance, Indian rulers were not allowed to have their independent armed forces, army. Companies supplied troops to them for their protection from other rulers, other enemies. But the rulers were supposed to pay a fixed amount to the company for maintaining the subsidiary forces. If the Indian rulers failed to make the payment, then part of their territory was taken away as penalty. For example, in 1801, what happened? When Nawab of Awadh failed to pay for the subsidiary forces, he was forced to give over half of his territory to the company. Similarly, the Nizam of Hyderabad also joined this system. So, this system allowed the British to maintain a large army at the expense of local rulers. So, the local rulers got security but lost independence. Isn't it? Yes. Then we saw about Tipu Sultan, the tiger of Mysore, isn't it? Actually, Mysore had grown in strength under the leadership of powerful rulers like Hyder Ali and his son Tipu Sultan, isn't it? Actually, Hyder Ali ruled from 1761 to 1782 and Tipu Sultan ruled from 1782 to 1799. Actually, Mysore, a powerful state in the south, was important for the British. Why? Because it controlled a large part of profitable trade of the Malabar coast, where the company purchased pepper and cardamom. In fact, in 1785, Tipu Sultan stopped the export of sandalwood, pepper and cardamom, and also he disallowed local merchants from trading with the company. And also he established a close relationship with the French in India, because in order to modernize his army with their help. So the British were furious. They saw Hyder and Tipu as ambitious, arrogant and dangerous rulers who had to be controlled and crushed. So 4 wars were fought with Mysore. First war took place in the year 1767 to 69. Then second war took place in the year 1780 to 84. Then third Anglo-Mysore war took place in the year 1790 to 92. And the fourth Anglo-Mysore war took place in the year 1799. You know, the fourth Anglo-Mysore war, also known as the Battle of Seringapatam. Why? Because Tipu Sultan was killed defending his capital Seringapatam. You know, children, Seringapatam is also known as Srirangapatnam. Okay. Then at last Tipu Sultan was killed, right? Then the company got victory. Then Mysore was placed under the former ruling dynasty of the Udayas, and subsidiary alliance was imposed on the state. Got it? See children, now we are going to see war with the Marathas. Okay. Actually, from the late 18th century, almost 1780s, after 1780s, 1790s, the company also sought to curb and destroy Maratha power. They were ready to crush Maratha power. Then by the time third battle of Panipat in 1761, the Maratha lost. So what happened? The third battle of Panipat in 1761, the Marathas' dream of ruling from Delhi was shattered. It came to an end. So that They were divided into many states under different chiefs, sardars, belonging to dynasties such as Scindia, Holkar, Gaikwad and Bhonsle. Actually, these chiefs were held together in a confederacy under a Peshwa. Peshwa means principal minister, the prime minister like a. So that what happened? The Scindia, Holkar, Gaikwad and Bhonsle chiefs were held together in a confederacy under a Peshwa. Actually, he became its effective military and administrative head based in Pune. Mahadji Scindia and Nana Fatnes were two famous Maratha soldiers and statesmen of the late 18th century. Who were the famous Maratha soldiers? Mahadji Scindia and Nana Fatnes. Okay, these both were Mahadji Scindia and Nana Fatnes were two famous Maratha soldiers and statesmen of the late 18th century. Actually, the Marathas had suffered a crushing defeat in the Third Battle of Panipat in 1761. So, the East India Company used these opportunities and the Marathas were subdued in series of wars. The British East India Company declared war against Marathas. So, in the first war that ended in 1782 with the Treaty of Salbai. So, the first Anglo-Maratha war came to an end with the Treaty of Salbai. In which year? 1782. With the Treaty of Salbai, the first Anglo-Maratha war came to an end. Then the second Anglo-Maratha war in the years 1803 to 5 was fought on different fronts, resulting in the British gaining Orissa and the territories north of the Yamuna river, including Agra and Delhi. So, due to the second Anglo-Maratha war, the British East India Company, the English East India Company gained power on Orissa and the Agra and Delhi. Then finally, the third Anglo-Maratha war in the years say 1870 to 19 crushed Maratha power completely. So that what happened? The Peshwa was removed and sent away to Bittur near Kanpur with a pension. The company now had complete control over the territories south of the Vindhyas. So, after the Maratha wars, three Maratha wars, the company had complete control over the territories south of the Vindhyas. Okay. Now, we are going to see the claim to paramountcy. See, policy of paramountcy was introduced by Lord Warren Hastings. See, for gaining control of Indian territories, Lord Warren Hastings, Governor General from 1813 to 1823, Governor General of East India Company's territories, initiated the policy of paramountcy. According to the policy of paramountcy, the British declared that the British were a paramount or supreme power. So what do you mean by paramountcy? Supreme power. Paramount means supreme power. Their power was greater than the power of Indian states. In order to protect their power, they were justified in annexing the territories or threatening to seize any Indian kingdom. If they annexed any Indian kingdom, what did they do? They justified their activities. We are right. You are wrong. So we are annexing your company, annexing your territories. What is that? Because of your inefficient ruling, we are annexing your territories like that. In order to protect their power, they were justified in annexing or threatening to seize any Indian kingdom. This policy was used to justify the annexations of Punjab, Sindh and Afghanistan in the 1813s. Okay, so who introduced policy of paramountcy? Lord Warren Hastings. Okay, however, this process, this territorial expansion policies when challenged. For example, when the British tried to annex the small state of Kittur at present in Karnataka, Rani Channamma took to arms and led an anti-British resistance movement. See, Kittur Channamma, the Queen of Kittur, was one of the first Indian rulers to lead an armed rebellion against the British East India Company in the year 1824 against the implementation of the East India Company's policies. So she was arrested in 1824 and died in prison in 1829. But Rayana, a poor Chaugidar means watchman, like Padukavalan. So Rayana, a poor Chaugidar of Sangoli in Kittur, carried on the resistance. He destroyed many British camps and records, but he was caught and hanged by the British in 1830. Okay, so who introduced the policy of paramountcy? Lord Warren Hastings, right? Actually, what was the objective behind the company's new policy of paramountcy? The company claimed that its authority was paramount or supreme. Paramount means supreme, and therefore its power was greater than that of Indian states. So, company's power was greater than that of Indian states. The East India Company claimed that its authority was supreme power. Okay. Children, look at this picture. When British tried to annex the small state of Kittur, Rayana, a poor Chaugidar of Sangoli in Kittur, carried on the resistance. But unfortunately, he was caught and hanged by the British in 1830, isn't it? And who was the queen of Kittur? Rani Channamma. Kittur queen. Who was the queen of Kittur? Rani Channamma, isn't it? Yes. Children, now we will see the doctrine of lapse. Okay. See, the final wave of annexations came under Lord Dalhousie, who was the Governor General from 1848 to 1856. He introduced the policy of doctrine of lapse, and according to this policy, if any Indian ruler died without a male heir, his kingdom would lapse, that is, become part of company territory. So, what happened? The kingdom would lapse, that is, become part of company territory when? If a ruler, Indian ruler, died without a male heir. Okay, so if they have adopted daughters or if they have adopted sons also, after they died, it would not automatically pass to his adopted heir. The kingdom would lapse, that is, become part of company territory. So, if an Indian ruler died without a male heir, his kingdom would lapse, that is, become part of company territory. Got it? So that the kingdoms of Satara in the year 1848, Sambalpur in 1850, Udaipur in 1852, Nagpur in 1853 and Jhansi in 1854 were annexed simply by applying this doctrine of lapse. So, the doctrine of lapse was introduced by whom? Lord Dalhousie. Got it? Now we are going to see about the East India Company's new administration setup. Okay, see, Warren Hastings, Governor General of India from 1773 to 1785, introduced several administrative reforms. In fact, most famous of which were in the areas of justice. So, who became the first Governor General of India? Lord Warren Hastings, right? See, he played a major role in the expansion of company power, and by the end of his time, the company had acquired power in Bengal. Acquired means got. The uh, company had got power in Bengal, Bombay, and Madras. See, British territories were broadly divided into administrative units called presidencies. So, according to their administrative convenience, the British territories were divided into three presidencies. They were Bengal Presidency, Bombay Presidency, and Madras Presidency. Okay. Actually, each presidency was ruled by a governor, and districts were ruled by the collectors. So, each presidency was ruled by a governor, and the districts were ruled by the collectors. And the Governor General was the supreme head of the administration. So, who became the supreme head of the administration? The Governor General. Then, who was the first Governor General of British territories? Lord Warren Hastings, isn't it? Yes. Then the Governor General introduced several administrative reforms, especially in the year 1773 to 1785. Lord Warren Hastings introduced so many administrative reforms, notably in the sphere of justice. Okay. Actually, from 1772, a new system of justice was established. In which year a new system of justice was established? 1772. According to that, each district was to have two courts. What were they? One was a criminal court, that is known as Faujdari Adalat, and a civil court, it was known as Diwani Adalat. Okay, then Maulvis and Hindu Pandits interpreted Indian laws for the European district collectors who presided over civil courts. See, Maulvis means Muslim Pandits, and Hindu Pandits also interpreted. They explained Indian laws for the European district collectors who presided over the civil courts. Then the criminal courts were still under the Qazi. Qazi means a judge and a mufti, but under the supervision of the collectors. Okay. But a major problem was that the Brahmin Pandits gave different interpretations of local laws based on the Dharma Shastra. Actually, what do you mean by Dharma Shastra? Dharma Shastra means Sanskrit text prescribing social rules and codes behavior composed from 500 BCE onwards. Okay. To bring out uniformity, in 1775, 11 Pandits were asked to compile a digest of Hindu laws. N.B. Halhed translated this digest into English. By 1778, a code of Muslim laws was also compiled for the benefit of European judges. Under the Regulating Act of 1773, a new Supreme Court was established. So, under the Regulating Act of 1773, a new Supreme Court was established. The Zadar Nizamat Adalat was also set up at Calcutta. So, Supreme Court, in which year Supreme Court was established? 1773 according to the Regulating Act. Okay. Then it is also known as Sadar Nizamat Adalat. Okay. Then the district collector was the principal figure in an Indian district because districts were ruled by the collectors, right? As the title suggests, his main job was to collect revenue and taxes and maintain law and order in his district. With the help of whom? With the help of judges, police officers and tauragas. Tauragas also known as police officers. Okay. So the administration of the company was different from that of the Indian rulers in the following ways. Already I have told you that British territories were divided into administrative units called presidencies. What were they? They were Bengal Presidency, Madras Presidency and Bombay, right? Then each presidency was ruled by a governor, right? Then districts were ruled by the collectors, isn't it? Yes, the Governor General was the supreme head of the administration. So who was the supreme head of the administration? The Governor General, isn't it? Yes. See, now we are going to see about the company army. See, colonial rule in India brought in some new ideas of administration and reform, but its power rested on its military strength. See, the Mughal army was mainly composed of cavalry, savas, like cavalry means Kudurai Padai. Okay, savas are the Kudurais, savas, actually soldiers who fought on horseback. So, Kudurai Padai Veerargal, okay. So cavalry trained soldiers on horseback and infantry that is pedal foot soldiers. Okay, they were given training in archery, you know, archery and the use of the sword also. The cavalry dominated the army and the Mughal state did not feel the need to have a large professionally trained infantry. Actually, the rural areas had a large number of armed peasants and the local zamindars often supplied the Mughals with paidal soldiers, means Kolat Pada Veerargal. Okay. But a change occurred in the 18th century, like after 1700, some change occurred in the 18th century when Mughal successor states like Awadh and Benares started recruiting peasants into their armies and training them as professional soldiers. So the East India Company adopted the same method when it began recruitment for its own army, which came to be known as the Sepoy army, from the Indian word Sepoy meaning soldiers. Okay. Then warfare technology changed from the 1820s. The cavalry requirements of the company's army declined. This is because the British Empire was fighting in Burma, Afghanistan and Egypt, where soldiers were armed with muskets and matchlocks. See, musket means a heavy gun used by infantry soldiers. Then matchlock means an early type of gun in which the powder form, which lightened by a match like a vedi. No. So the soldiers of the company's army had to keep pace with the changing military requirements, and its infantry regiments now became more important. Okay. So in the early 19th century, after 1800, the British began to develop a uniform military culture. Soldiers were increasingly subjected to European style training, drill and discipline that regulated their life for more than before. So they brought changes and they gave proper training and drill practice, isn't it? They regulated their life also. So often this created problems since caste and community feelings were ignored in building a force of professional soldiers. There also some problems occurred because of caste and community feelings were ignored. Okay, so the army of East India Company was known as Sepoy Army. The main participations of the army were the peasants of India, then trained by the East India Company to become professional soldiers. Okay, and also the company introduced a uniform military culture where soldiers were given European training through drills and other exercises. Got it? Now we will discuss about the reasons for the success of the British. See, first one, weakness of Indian rulers. See, some Indian rulers did not want to forego their comfortable lifestyle. So they chose subsidiary alliance rather than fighting the British. Already we know very well subsidiary alliance was introduced by whom? Lord Wellesley, right? According to this subsidiary alliance, what happened? The East India Company gained control of more and more Indian territories, isn't it? Because of his expansion policy. Nice. Children, in this chapter, we learned Vasco da Gama's voyage, right? Who discovered the sea route from Europe to India, Europe to East? Of course, Vasco da Gama. Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese sailor, discovered a sea route from Portugal to the east, and in the year 1498, Vasco da Gama and his crew landed at Calicut, right? Then what did we discuss? We discussed about the English East India Company's arrival. Actually, the English East India Company was a small trading company. Then we saw about their territorial expansion through their policies, isn't it? Yes, then we saw about the Battle of Plassey, and in which year Battle was fought? On 23rd June 1757, Battle of Plassey was fought between whom? Siraj-ud-Dawla, the Nawab of Bengal, and the English East India Company's force under the leadership of Robert Clive, right? Then who won the battle? Robert Clive won the battle. Siraj-ud-Dawla was killed by the British force, right? Then what did we discuss? We saw about the Battle of Buxar, right? In 1764, the Battle of Buxar was fought between whom? Britishers and Mir Qasim. Mir Qasim was the Nawab of Bengal after Siraj-ud-Dawla, right? Then what happened? In 1765, the Mughal Emperor appointed the company as the Diwan of the provinces of Bengal. Isn't it? Yes. Then we saw about company officials became Nababs. Nababs, an anglicized version of the Indian word Nawab. In 1764, who became the governor of Bengal? Robert Clive was appointed governor of Bengal, isn't it? Then we saw about Tipu Sultan, the tiger of Mysore, right? Tipu Sultan was the son of whom? Hyder Ali, ruler of Mysore. Then Tipu Sultan ruled Mysore from 1782 to 1799, isn't it? Then 4 wars were fought between Britishers and Mysore and were known as the Anglo-Mysore Wars. In the year 1767 to 69, then 1780 to 84, then 1790 to 92 and 1799. In 1799, what happened? The Britishers won the Battle of Seringapatam against Mysore. In that battle, Tipu Sultan was killed defending his capital Seringapatam. Seringapatam is also known as Srirangapattinam, isn't it? Yes. Then we saw about war with the Marathas, isn't it? Actually, the first Anglo-Maratha war lasted from 1775 to 1782. Then the third Anglo-Maratha War of 1817 to 1819 crushed Maratha power, isn't it? Then the climb to paramountcy. See, under Lord Hastings, a new policy of paramountcy was initiated. What is meant is paramount? Supreme power, isn't it? Yes. Who introduced the policy of paramountcy? Lord Hastings, right? Then we saw about the doctrine of lapse, right? The doctrine of lapse was introduced by whom? Lord Dalhousie, who was the Governor General from 1848 to 1856. Then, according to this doctrine of lapse, Jhansi, Satara, Jaipur, Sambalpur, Udaipur, Nagpur, and many territories were annexed by the company, right? Then we discussed about setting up a new administration. In that, British territories were broadly divided into administrative units called presidencies. The supreme head of the administration was the Governor General, right? Then who was the first Governor General of India? Lord Warren Hastings, right? Then each district had two courts, a criminal court, it was known as Faujdari Adalat, and a civil court was known as Diwani Adalat, right? Then we saw about the company army. See, colonial rule in India brought in some new ideas of administration and reform, but its real strength was its military. Isn't it? In the early 19th century, the British began to develop a uniform military culture. Got it? So, soldiers were given European style training and drill practice. So that soldiers were subjected to European style training, drill and discipline that regulated their life for more than before. Okay. Then we saw about the reasons for the success of the British, right? Students, I hope you all understood this chapter clearly. Thank you.